Hi, 9th and 10th grade lit. We are continuing with the parables today. We are continuing also with the parables of Christ. So we have already done two sections where two different parables from the Old Testament. Now we're solely in the New Testament and solely on Christ, who used parables all the time, these fictitious short stories, to get a spiritual truth across to people who really hadn't develop their critical thinking skills. It's part of that training process he was getting people ready for. Okay, you know that since we're finished with our history book that we're doing double literature. So this is the first lecture for today, and I'm going to do this for half an hour, take a quick little break, and then do another one for half an hour. So you have two literature lectures today, and no history, obviously. You still have to finish up your history books. As soon as they're done, you can drop them off. I know there's going to be a drop off at the school next Thursday and Friday. So if you want to wait until then and drop it off then, that's fine. But if anytime it's convenient for you, it's fine. You can just drop it off at the school. Okay, so we are going on to the next parable, which is this one. The parable of the man who goes out and hires laborers. Okay, so let's go over this one. Matthew 20:1-6 says, "For the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is a householder, which went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. And when he had agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And he went out about the third hour, and saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And he said unto them, Go you also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right I will give you. And they went their way. Again he went out about the 6th and 9th hour, and did likewise. And about the 11th hour he went out, and found others standing idle, and saith unto them, Why stand you here all day idle? Okay, so here we have another example of what the kingdom of heaven is like. The kingdom of heaven would be God on his throne, everybody following him as they should. We can look at it as eventual heaven, okay? The kingdom of heaven. This is when everybody goes. It's perfection. So it's like God is going out and calling people to him at different parts of the day. Okay, think about it. Think about how long it has been since Christ was crucified and resurrected. That was been over 2,000 years. So people right from the beginning who were followers of Christ, they actually followed Christ's footsteps on this planet. They got to go to heaven a lot faster than I'll get to go to heaven. Okay, because I'm not going for another it's been at least 2,000 years, and who knows when I'm finally going to get to go. But that's what he's talking about. You look at the long stretch between Christ rising from the dead and everybody going to heaven a little bit at a time all throughout that history. And you can even go a little bit before that, where people who knew about Christ, who accepted that the Christ was going to come, were also set aside for the kingdom of heaven. So this is the picture of a man who has a house. He's a householder, and he goes out to hire laborers for his vineyard, people to go out and harvest his grapes. Now, he's going out early in the morning to find people to harvest his grapes. Here's the thing about harvesting. You really have to do it all at once. You can do a little bit here and there, but there comes a time when you have to get all the fruit off the trees or off the vine or all the vegetables out of the ground. There comes a time when you have to say, okay, today we have to get it all in, because if there's a change in the weather, that means you could lose your produce. Okay, so here he is early in the morning. First thing, goes out and hires laborers for his vineyard. And he agrees with them that they are going to be paid 1 penny per day. That's a day's wages. Then he goes out again at the third hour of the day, so think 3 hours after sunrise, and sees other people still standing around in the marketplace, standing idle. Now he needs his crop brought in immediately, so he sees more workers and says, okay, great. I already have workers in the vineyard. Now I need more work. Come on, you can help them. We'll get done faster. And then he goes out later in the day and he says, okay, look, I can get even more workers out there. We can get done faster. He does this 4 times. Okay. So he does it early in the morning, third hour, 6th hour, 9th hour. And he keeps bringing laborers in to harvest all the grapes. And he's trying to get more and more people into that vineyard, because the closer it comes to the end of the day, the more likely it is he's going to lose his crop, or at least a portion of his crop. So he brings in all the people he can as quickly as many as he can throughout the day. Now, they say unto him, he asked the people who are there at the end of the day, how come you've been standing in the marketplace all day? How come you haven't gotten a job? These are day laborers. And they said unto him, because no man hath hired us. That's why. It's an easy question. It's probably looking at him going, well, duh. Nobody hired us. And he saith unto them, go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right, that ye shall receive. So he hires this last group of people who have been doing absolutely nothing all day. Okay, so when even was come, so it's the end of the day, harvest is in, yea. The Lord of the vineyard saith unto his steward, call unto the laborers and give them their hire, beginning from the last unto the first. So the last people he hired in the marketplace, they're going to get paid first. And when they were hired about the 11th hour, they received every man 1 penny. Remember, that was the original price he offered to the people he hired in the first hour of the day. Here are people who only worked about an hour, and they're getting a penny. And everybody's like, ooh, we should get a little bit more. But when the first came, they supposed they should have received more. They were promised a penny, they got a penny, and now they're fussing about it. And they likewise received every man a penny. And when they received it, they murmured against the goodman of the house, saying, these last have wrought but 1 hour, and thou hast made them equal unto us, which have borne the burden and the heat of the day. But he answered one of them and said, friend, I do thee no wrong. Didst thou not agree with me for a penny? But he answered one of them and said, friend, I repeated that one. Take that as thine, in other words, take your penny, and go thy way. I will give unto the last even as unto thee. Is it not lawful for me to do what I will with mine own? Is thine eye evil because I'm good? You can look at me and be angry at me. It doesn't change the fact that I'm not to blame. We had an agreement. I stuck to that agreement. So shall the last the last shall be first, and the first last. For many be called, but few chosen. If we look at this as an example of the kingdom of heaven, the people who were on the planet when Christ was on the planet went to heaven not too long after he went. Then we had these long stretch of over 2,000 years of people serving Christ, dying, going to heaven, serving Christ, dying, going to heaven, serving Christ, dying, going to heaven. And then you get to the very end of the world, and you're going to have people who are saved for just a very short period of time, dying, going to heaven, or being raptured up into heaven. And the question is, well, shouldn't the people who actually were on the planet with Christ get a little more credit than the people who, got saved and an hour later the rapture happened? The answer is no. Heaven is for all of us. It's equal. The vineyard master is God himself, and he has offered this opportunity for all of us. And we all get to heaven, as Pastor likes to say, on the same day, because there is no night in heaven. Okay, good proverb. Okay, sorry, parable. The next one, we have this gorgeous painting here, and I put it up for both pages of this this parable. This is the parable of the Great Banquet by Brunswick monogrammist, whom I've never even heard of before, but the painting is remarkably beautiful. So as we go through it, also take some time to look at the painting because it's worth seeing. Okay, so here's the next parable. And Jesus answered and spake unto them again by parables, and said, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a certain king, which made a marriage for his son. So that would make him the prince, right? So you have the king, and he's preparing a marriage for his son, and sent forth his servants to call them that were bidden to the wedding, and they would not come. These are people who already belong to the kingdom. They are members of that kingdom, and yet when they're called by their king, they say, no, thank you, we're not coming. And again, he sent forth other servants, saying, tell them which are bidden, behold, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and my fatlings are killed, and all things are ready. Come unto the marriage. But they made light of it. That means they're joking about it. They mocked it, and went their ways, one to his farm, another to his merchandise. And the remnant, take a look at this. This is kind of twisted. the remnant took his servants, it's the king's servants, and entreated them spitefully and slew them. So the people who called and said, "Come, join the king's banquet, come to the banquet," some of them got killed for offering that invitation. But when the king heard thereof, he was wroth. Of course he was. His servants were killed. And he sent forth his armies and destroyed those murderers. God does not wink at sin. And he burned up their city. He totally annihilated them. Okay. Then saith he to his servants, "The wedding is ready, but they which were bidden were not worthy." So here they had all of the opportunity to go to the wedding. They had the rank to go to the wedding. They had been chosen to go to the wedding. And they said, "Oh, no, thank you." So who's going to come and eat that feast? Here's the next opportunity here. "Go ye therefore unto the highways, and as many as ye shall find, bid to the marriage." Okay, so those servants went out into the highways and gathered together all as many as they found, both bad and good, and the wedding was furnished with guests. And when the king came in to see the guests, he saw there was a man which had not on a wedding garment. And he saith unto him, "Friend, how camest thou hither, not having a wedding garment?" And he was speechless. Then said the king to the servants, "Bind him hand and foot, and take him away, and cast him into outer darkness, where there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen." Okay, let's talk about what this is really about, because remember, this is all a metaphor. It's a parable. Parables are metaphors. So who were the original people that God approached and said, "I want you to be part of my kingdom"? Well, he's talking about the original Israelites, okay? The people who are related to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then the 12 patriarchs, the sons of Jacob, who make up the 12 tribes of Israel. And then after Israel was conquered and spread throughout the world, and then Judah and Benjamin were taken to Babylon for the Babylonian captivity, when they finally came out of that, they started going by the generic name Jews. Okay, so here we have the Jewish people who are the remnant. They're the ones left behind. They have the Bible, they have the scriptures, they have been teaching. And here's the weird thing. After the Babylonian captivity, the people of, well, the Jewish people, they actually fell again. They went back into some loose living instead of being totally committed to God. And they got in trouble, and they were taken over by yet another group. I believe it was the Saracens. And then from there, they said to themselves, "We've got to stop this pattern of behavior. We've got to worship the one true God only." And at that point, they started to make up a bunch of other rules to help them obey the rules that God gave them. Okay. God gave them some really basic rules to live by. First, there's 10 commandments, and then there's individual laws after that. But it's pretty freeing in that spectrum of all the laws that God gave to the people of Israel. There was a lot of wiggle room, a way you could live your life the best way you could. I mean, all you had to do was follow the Lord's leading. But these new leaders are saying, you know what? People have had the opportunity to worship God the way they saw fit, and they messed up so much that we need to tell them how to worship God. And so they started adding a bunch of other laws and other rules, and some of them got a little on the ridiculous side. Some were, but they were genuinely trying to help the people do right. But what ends up happening is, in about 300 years, people are paying more attention to the man-made rules than to God's law and the way God wants people to live. So when the time comes, you have God, who is the Father, the certain king. He is preparing a marriage for his son. That would be the marriage supper of the Lamb, which we find in Revelation, when everybody has been raptured to heaven and he is married spiritually to the church. We become the bride of Christ. So now it's the time of who's going to come to the wedding. So he sends those who were bidden. He had called the people of Israel to be his chosen people. They were called, they're bidden to the wedding, but they don't come. That's what this is about. There were a lot of people in Jesus's time who refused to believe that he was the Messiah because they didn't want to give up their specific brand of laws. So the people that he's talking about in this parable were the people who were the Jewish people at the time. Now, I don't want to use it's hard to say the Jewish people because Jesus was Jewish. All his disciples were Jewish. The people who believed in him first, I mean, that was the original Christian church, was all Jewish. Okay. But we're talking about the Jewish people who don't believe that he's a Messiah. So they say, no, we don't agree. We're not going to follow this. So then he sends other servants. The servants are prophets, the prophets of the Old Testament, warning people that it's time for the wedding. It's get ready for the wedding. The wedding's coming. He sends other servants saying, tell them which are bidden. I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and my fatling are killed. All things are ready. Come unto the marriage. They make light of it. They mock those prophets. And sometimes the prophets ended up getting killed for their message. And that's what we see happening in verse 6. So when the king hears thereof, he is wroth. He sends his armies. He destroys the murderers. He burns up their cities. This is those moments of being conquered that happen over and over again in Israeli history and Jewish history. And then finally he says to his servants, the wedding is ready, but they were bidden. Those who were chosen were not worthy. They didn't choose to believe. Okay. So go ye therefore into the highways, and as many as ye find, bid to the marriage. Now he's opening it up outside of Judaism to Gentiles. The people who normally the Jewish people wouldn't eat with because they were so disgusting and dirty. Okay. And it wasn't just because of physical dirt. It was spiritual dirt. Okay. The people who were Gentiles during the time of Christ were also even called dogs because the food they ate was unclean. Okay. They ate blood in their food. Some of their sexual practices were really disturbing. The way they treated people was just heinous. And so it was very different from Jewish law, even though Jewish law had gotten much more strict over time. So the servants go out into the highways and they gather up what are the metaphor for Gentiles. They get to come to the wedding instead. And when the king came in to see the guests, he saw there was a man which had not on a wedding garment. So someone got in, but they didn't take it seriously. They just wanted to enjoy all the free stuff, but they didn't want to put anything out. They didn't want to change their clothes. Okay, so let's talk about when Jesus was on earth. He is there specifically to talk to the Jewish people. In fact, a Grecian woman comes up to him and asks for healing for her daughter, and he says to her, I'm here for the Jewish people. It wouldn't be right for me to feed the dog under the table the children's food. And then she turned around and said, yes, but even the dog gets a crumb from the table. And he said, Bob's your uncle. You've got faith. I'm going to heal your daughter. Okay, so here we have Christ coming specifically for the Jewish people. The majority of them rejected him. So then he opens this up in the marriage to the Gentiles. Okay, but not everybody who goes through the motions of being part of the kingdom of heaven is actually part of the kingdom of heaven. Sometimes people sneak in. Sometimes they look the part. Sometimes they don't. In this case, the guy does not have a wedding garment. Let's pretend for a second that we're not looking at him from the outside. Let's say from the outside, he looks like everybody else, but from the inside, he's dirty. He's filthy. His righteousness is like filthy rags, the Bible calls it. You're talking about someone who's pretending salvation because they want the benefit of the social life or they want the power. They may be even presenting themselves as a spiritual leader, and then turns out they're not even following Christ. They're just doing it for the cash or the power. So this is what's happening here. This person who is snuck into the wedding but is not truly changed. Get that? He's not truly changed. He didn't change his clothes. Because he's not truly changed, he gets kicked out and is in outer darkness where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. That is a metaphor for hell. It's pretty strict. Okay. Now we have a series of 3 parables that Jesus tells. One has to do with a lost sheep, one has to do with a lost coin, and one has to do with a lost son. Okay, and they're often taught as all 3 because all 3 have a very specific thing to say and they all go together. Okay, so let's start with Luke 15, 4 through 9. What man of you having 100 sheep, if he lose one of them, doth not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after that which is lost until he find it? He's talking to people who are, I know you're going to be shocked by this, familiar with shepherds and sheep. He's talking to sheep owners here. He's saying, look, just like you would go after the one sheep that got lost, that's the way God is looking at people too. He realizes there's a lot of people out there, but he doesn't have to worry about the ones that are found. He has to go seek those who are lost. So let's go through it again. And when he hath found it, he layeth it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he cometh home, he calleth together his friends and neighbors, saying unto them, rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep, which was lost. And then we get this little insight into heaven, which is so cool. I say unto you that likewise joy shall be in heaven over one sinner that repenteth. That means when you ask Jesus Christ into your heart, when you've turned away from your sin and turned toward him, there is rejoicing in heaven because of that. Angels are dancing for you. Okay? More than over 99 just persons which need no repentance. The angels are rejoicing over the newly found or newly saved rather than those who have already been saved. Either what woman having 10 pieces of silver, ooh, we got math now, if she loses one piece, what's she going to do? Say, that's okay, I got $9. I don't need 10. No, nobody does that. If she loses one piece, she doth not light a candle and sweep the house and seek diligently until she findeth it. Okay, so here is a woman, think about, this is her money that she needs to run her household, which is a not just a privilege, but it's an incredibly difficult job, and women need to be respected if they are choosing to be homemakers. And most women are homemakers, even if they don't work at home full time. But here's a woman who's a homemaker. She's got the 10 pieces of silver that she needs to run her home. She loses one piece. Instead of saying, oh, well, I don't need that. No, she stops what she's doing and she tears her house apart. You have done this at least once in your life. It might not be over a piece of silver. It might be over one thing that you are missing. You need to have it. It's absolutely necessary to you. And you will just tear up your backpack, your locker, your room, the back seat of your car, the trunk. You will go through everything trying to find this thing that you have lost. This is exactly what it's talking about. She doesn't just shrug her shoulders and say, it's okay, I got 9 pieces of silver. No, she lights a candle. She gets into every nook and cranny of her house looking for that lost piece of silver. She sweeps her floor to make sure that she hasn't misplaced that silver. Silver hasn't rolled away somewhere. So she seeks diligently till she finds it. She doesn't stop until it's found. That's the way God looks at us. He doesn't stop until he's found us. When she hath found it, she calleth her friends and her neighbors together, saying, rejoice with me. Come on, let's party. For I have found the piece which I have lost. Now, finding a sheep, really important back in the day because that was livelihood for a lot of people. Sheep are, you could eat lamb or you can let that lamb grow up and use its wool. And then once it's 3 years old, it's classified as mutton. So you can have mutton. I don't eat any of that. And I don't really wear wool because I live in Southern California. But I understand that in the Middle East, a lamb would be or sheep would be an incredibly important investment to keep a hold of. Then we have the piece of silver, an incredibly important investment for this woman who is a homemaker. That is her job. That is her career. And she needs that piece of silver. Those are both really important things. But the third parable is about the most important thing, and that is someone's child. Likewise, I say unto you, there is joy in the presence of angels of God over one sinner that repenteth, just like a lost coin. And he said, a certain man hath 2 sons. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me a portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided him unto them his living. Okay, I just noticed this and I'm like, having a little moment of geek out. You ready? We start out with 1 sheep out of 100, then 1 coin out of 10, and now we're down to 1 boy out of 2. How cool is that? I love stuff like this. Okay. Certain man has 2 sons. The youngest of them said, younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me, and divided unto them his living. So the younger son says, I'm supposed to come into an inheritance when you die. I want all my stuff now. That's what's falling to me. And you notice that the Bible doesn't say that he just gave the younger son his portion. It said he divided unto them his living. So the older son got his portion too. Okay? Not many days after, the young son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. To waste his substance means he took his money, he wasted it, he threw it away, he got rid of it. But how did he get rid of it? With riotous living. That is partying. Okay? Yes, people used to party back in the day. Prostitution was a thing. So was drugs. So was alcohol. Okay? He had riotous living. He was in trouble. He was living a wrong way. And when he had spent all, he lost everything. He spent it all. And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want. So he had gone away from home, lost all his money, wasted all his money in riotous living. And then there was a famine in the land, which, he probably could have really used that money to eat. But no, he began to be in want. To be in want means he wants something. That's when the Bible says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. That means you already have plenty. But this guy's in want. That means he's starving. Okay? So, and he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country. It sounds really nice, doesn't it? That means he volunteered to be a slave. He joined himself to a citizen of that country. He's not even in his own country. So he joined himself or became a slave to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine. This is a boy. Well, let's just bring it to where Jesus was. Jesus is talking to fellow Jews who do not eat pork. In fact, they don't have anything really to do with pigs, with the exception of being forced to grow pigs for the Roman government back in Jesus' time. Sometimes that happened. So everybody knew pigs, bad. Ooh, can't eat those, because they were considered an unclean animal in the Old Testament. So this boy wouldn't have been around pigs growing up. And now he is feeding those pigs. And he would have fain filled his belly with the husks that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. Now Jesus is making it even more desperate. This kid wants to eat the pig food. He feels that need to eat the pig food, but nobody is giving him any actual food. So he'd be eating the husk. That's the waste instead. Not poop, just waste, husk. If you've ever eaten popcorn, you get the little plastic thing that's husk, okay? You know what I'm talking about, the little hole. Ugh, I hate those. And when he came to himself, because now he's finally sobering up, he is having a lot of time to think as he's looking at the pigs eating their slop and thinking, man, that's kind of looking good. That's not a good thing. When he came to himself, he said, how many hired servants of my father's have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? He's like, here I am, a slave. I've given myself to somebody. And I think back to my father's servants, and they all have enough bread to eat and enough for leftovers. Here I am starving. I could go and be a servant to my dad just as easily as I'm a servant here. I will arise and go to my father and will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. Remember in the 10 Commandments, we are to honor our father and mother. Okay? So he's saying, Dad, I broke the commandment. I didn't honor you. I've sinned against heaven and against you. So, and I am no more worthy to be called thy son. I'm not even worthy of your name. Make me as one of thy hired servants. Because he figures if he asks for that, at least he'll get food. And he rose and came to his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion. It means he felt bad for him, and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. Now, a lot of people will start this whole thing about, men in the Middle East don't run and all this. Okay, well, there's plenty of evidence in the Old Testament that men did indeed run. Okay, Elijah, for instance, big runner. So that really doesn't have anything to do with this, but what it shows when he ran was he wanted to get to his son as quickly as possible. He ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. He is embracing his son. But the father said, and the son said unto him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and in thy sight. I'm no more worthy to be called thy son. So he gets out what his rehearsed line is. He's like, I've sinned. I messed up. Let me make it right. I'm not worthy to be called your son. I shouldn't go by your name because I've disgraced you. But the father said to his servants, Bring forth the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. Dad totally ignores this whole offer of, I can't be your son anymore. Guess what? There's going to be times in your Christian walk when you're going to blow it. And you're going to think to yourself, oh my goodness, am I really saved? If you've accepted Christ into your heart, yes, you are. Period. So what happens when you blow it? You confess your sin, just like this young man did, and you get right. But guess what? You've never been taken out of the Father's hand. You've never been taken out of Jesus' hand. You are in the hand of God, and you will always be labeled with his name. You can't walk away from him. You're his forever. So the father says, nuh-uh, you are always my son. Put on the best robe, put it on him, put a ring on his hand to show everybody you're mine, you're my son. Put shoes on his feet. And bring hither the fatted calf. This is going to be a celebration. It's time for the barbecue. Kill it and let us eat and be merry. This is a time of rejoicing because he has come back. He has come back home. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. So they're having a good time. Now his elder son, this young man's big brother, was in the field. And as he came and drew nigh, that means near the house, he heard music and dancing. It's like, is somebody having a party and didn't invite me? And the answer is yeah. Okay. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And they said unto him, Thy brother is come, yea! And thy father hath killed the fatted calf, because he hath received him safe and sound. And he was angry and would not go in. I'm not going to party because he's in there. Therefore came his father out and entreated him. And he, answering, said to his father, Lo, these many years do I serve thee. Here I have been doing the right thing for the longest time. I've neither transgressed, that means I've never broken your laws or never gone against your will. Neither transgressed I at any time thy commandment, and yet thou never gavest me a kid that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as this son was come, like my loser brother comes home, which hath devoured thy living with harlots. Oh, turns out baby brother's reputation had made it all the way home. They knew what he had been about. Thou hast killed for him the fatted calf. And he said unto him, and this is the father speaking. Are you ready? Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. Here's two people. Both belong to the Father. One walked away for a time and was welcomed back. The other never left and yet was angry when the person was able to become redeemed. And he said, It was meet that we should make merry and be glad, for this thy brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found. This is the lost child who is brought back. But guess what? The older son who never left, he always had everything his dad had too. He really didn't have anything to complain about. He was just angry because his pride got hurt. Okay, I'm sure you could hear the parallels between this story and the kingdom of heaven, but we'll go over it a little bit when we come back. We're going to take a quick break. This is our first lecture for today, and then I'll be back in a few minutes making the second lecture for today for literature.